What are we going to do with our diseased cow? How are we going to protect our farm? We're talking about that in today's episode of Ask Homesteady.
I always fix my hair because I look at it and I'm always like, oh my God.
Like crazy.
What happened?
This is the dreaded Ask Homesteady about Ladybug.
Are you dreading it, really?
I stopped doing Ask Homesteady a while ago because it felt too defensive. I got tired of defending ourselves. We don't have to defend ourselves. So let me preface this by, this is not us defending ourselves. We have every right to make whatever decision we're going to make on our homestead. But because we share so much of what we do here, we do like to explain ourselves.
That's why Ask Homesteady started, because a lot of people, you see a snippet of our life. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes that we don't have on camera just because we don't have cameras on us 24/7. So kind of helps to explain to people why we're making the choices we're making, and also for people who are just starting out to really give them some good information about what are practical ways to help on your farm. This is going to be about Yonis, this video.
It's going to be about Yonis.
Say we aren't experts on Yonis. We've been thrown into the deep end of the pool and have learned a lot about it very quickly within the last 2 months.
We have talked to experts in veterinary medicine, cow experts. We talked to Cody Creelman here on the channel, but we had a whole nother private conversation with Cody. We've been talking...
We've gotten advice from Yonis certified veterinarians as well.
We've been talking to other cow specialists, some you've seen here in the comments section. I want to especially thank Karen L. for all her answers in the comments. You'll see her in the comments of this video. She's a very knowledgeable source for cows. So we've been getting from a lot of counselors and from a lot of sources, a lot of advice. Here's our decisions going forward. You might make a different decision. That's okay. We just want to tell you what we're going to do. And we're going to go through this episode of Ask Homesteady. Normally we answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions. We got like 10 today. And we're not going to tell you who asked the question because like everybody asked the same questions all the time over the last few videos. Everybody wants to know these questions. So here we go. The most demanded answer questions about Ladybug, Yonis, our cows, our property, all the animals. Let's dive in.
All right.
A lot of people have been doing what we have been doing, wondering how did Ladybug, a cow that was purchased from a disease-free herd, wind up with one of the diseases we specifically were trying to avoid by buying a disease-free cow from a supposed disease-free herd. So, a few people wanted to know, did we vaccinate her for Yonis and now she has it because of a vaccine?
No, she was never vaccinated for Yonis. The Yonis vaccine, from my knowledge, this is what I've learned about the vaccinations, is it will be given to herds with already known cases of Yonis. So it's not something that you can get and give to your cow, because it doesn't prevent them from contracting Yonis. It doesn't prevent them from shedding it. It just prevents them from dying from it. So if you're in a dairy and your herd's just full of Yonis, you can get these vaccinations for your cows. Now maybe you've seen a cow, it's got a big lump on the front of its chest. That would be from a Yonis vaccination. So it's a pretty nasty vaccination actually, and no, Ladybug never got it.
The next one is
that means
the AI.
Yeah, it won't help Ladybug now. So there's no point in us getting it.
Yeah, that vaccine's kind of like for someone in our position, we wouldn't want to even bring that in, not even for the other cows. So
no,
not doing that, didn't do it, not doing it.
Yonis is contracted by calves in the first few months of their life. That's when it's most readily contracted by them from the feces of another cow or their dam who's been infected. That's what they figure is the most common way. Can also be contracted in utero if the cow is really shedding a lot, or from the colostrum or the milk of an infected cow. Does that mean Ladybug got it from the AI procedure, from the bull semen? Did that give her Yonis? No. She would have contracted this as a calf.
Which was another question people were asking. Did she get it from the AI procedure?
Yeah. So that's a no.
The only AI is actually a safer way to breed your cows and keep them less exposure to disease. The only source of disease through the AI is really the boots of your AI tech, and our AI tech is great. When he shows up, he washes right in front of us, does a scrub down, and then he goes inside. So yeah, very, very unlikely anything to do with the AI. Another thing people were wondering, if deer can carry it, did she get it from the deer here on the property? No, it's very unlikely. Again, whatever source she got it from, it happened way back when she was a calf. Learning that it's a wasting disease that deer can carry, there were a few people who asked, is it chronic wasting disease? It's a little confusing because Yonis is a wasting disease that is chronic.
They can refer to it as a chronic wasting disease.
But when you hear about CWD in deer, the chronic wasting disease in deer, it's a different disease. So it's not CWD.
That's all we'll say about it, because because we'll say something wrong.
Really, this comes down to the fact, from the mouth of many advisors and all the research we've done, it is most likely very safe to say Ladybug got this disease on the farm she was born at when she was a very young calf.
Again, there's no way to say if she got it from her dam or the calves at this farm were kept in a pen with other adults that were shedding it. There's no way to know. We just know that's probably where she got it from. A lot of people also wanted to know if we told the sellers where we got her from, the farm we got her from. Did we warn them that, you know, someone from their herd was diseased? And yes, we did. We also heard from people who recommended the farm to us and others who watched the show that they have also had Yonis positive cows from that farm.
So we did contact them, knowing that others who purchased from them have cows that now have Yonis, and we told them of our situation, and
they were not surprised.
No.
They also knew from last year, someone who had bought a cow from them had her die from Yonis. They knew they had sold this cow positive for Yonis, and they didn't say anything to us about it, or as far as we know anybody else, or admit to us that they had already heard about Yonis positive cows.
Some people have asked, are we going to sue them because we purchased what was thought to be disease-free cow? We paid very good money for a disease-free cow from a disease-free herd. No, we are not going to sue them.
They're not in business anymore.
For starters.
For selling cows.
Which we wanted to know, because we wanted to...
if they were still selling cows, it would feel like the responsible thing to do to tell them, hey,
you have to stop.
Let people know that you are infected with Yonis.
Yeah, so they're not selling anymore. Also, we don't believe that they knew at the time any of their cows had Yonis. We haven't had anyone come to light since we put out these videos tell us, hey, I knew 6 or 7 years ago I had Yonis from that farm. So we don't think they did anything, what's the word, like...
I think their biggest mistake was overconfidence in testing.
And we know from homesteading for 10 years, you can make that mistake very easily, of being overconfident. They handled it differently than I would have, and that I would have liked for them to have handled it, but I don't feel that's a reason to sue them. And because they're not in the business, we don't even have to mention who they are or warn you about making a purchase or anything, because they're not in the business anymore. Yeah, so that's it. I wouldn't buy any more animals from them.
We didn't have this great moment where there was an apology and we come away with this feeling great, and
no.
So
we're not super happy with how it was handled.
No.
But that's not.
What do you expect?
Yeah, bad things happen on homesteads, and we don't feel that's a reason to sue somebody. There's no guarantee when you buy an animal. And
yeah, we'll talk about that, I think, in the last question.
Okay,
That'll be a good time to talk about that.
Keep going. Things happen, right? As we've learned from this, like, bad things happen.
Right, and it's happened. So now what can we do moving forward?
So many people want to know, like, how are we going to keep our other animals safe? How are we going to keep the land safe? Ladybug was all over our pastures, in our barn. How can we keep everything safe? We can't. We can't keep everything safe. You can't either.
No. I mean, birds carry diseases. They fly from farm to farm. The deer, the little creatures everywhere, they can all bring disease to your animals.
We must be parked on like a sweat beehive, because I have had like 8 on me and you just had one on you. What happened? This used to be a good spot to sit.
When there's wind.
There's no way to keep our place. She's been here, there's been some risk exposure.
Right. There are steps though that we can take going forward to keep the other animals safe, which is one of the reasons she's in the back area of our farm now, one that we won't be using for a few years to keep any other animals there. As far as on the pasture, what's happened, what has she shedded out there, her numbers were low for a positive, which meant she was just starting to shed. So the impact on the land, hopefully, shouldn't be that bad for us.
A lot of people have been concerned, can the other animals catch this? Could the camels catch this? How about our rabbits? How about our goats when we had them? Yes, in theory, all ruminants are at risk, but again, it's the younger, the more risk that there is. So it is much less likely that Millie will ever catch this from Ladybug. Does she already have it from somewhere else? That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But most of our animals are very low risk for getting it from exposure to Ladybug, except for, of course, her calf and Luna's calf, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. A lot of people wanted to know, is this what killed our goats?
No.
You want to explain that a little bit?
Well, she wasn't shedding then, so there would have been no way for Ladybug to give the goats Yonis disease. In fact, we had just tested the goats, and they were clear of all diseases, so we are pretty positive that it was a serious worm bloom after they kidded that killed the goats last year.
Well, they tested positive for those worms, and
Right.
their death showed signs of worm.
Right.
So basically, how to keep everybody safe going forward, it's just what we've done. We're not gonna do a prescribed fire. We're not gonna burn the pastures. The best thing, most reasonable thing you can do is try to keep the animals away from where Ladybug was for a few years. She was out in the pasture. So
And keep the most susceptible ones. So
Yeah.
calves moving forward will be on an area where Ladybug wasn't.
right.
Then we had a lot of questions about how Yonis affects humans, the human health aspect of it. Is this why our baby's sick?
Yeah, a lot of people wanted to know, because when they learn about Yonis is being linked with Crohn's disease, and it's also being linked with other inflammatory issues. So did this cause our baby's issues?
We
cannot say conclusively
right,
no.
it didn't. But he never had Ladybug's milk
He
directly.
never drank Ladybug's milk.
I did, but it was when she wasn't shedding it yet, so probably not.
Very, very minimal chance that this has anything to do with the baby.
Yeah. That's one of the things, is linking Crohn's with Yonis. They're still working on it. So there's no telling really if it causes it, if it's linked to it, if it's because of a genetic issue the person has that they're susceptible to it. It's still ongoing research. And that's what Cody kept saying. The studies are ongoing with this.
And this is one of those interesting things, because while it's easy to look at our situation and say they have a baby who has digestive issues and they have this cow who's got Yonis, if you buy milk from the supermarket, you are drinking milk from herds that have cows that have Yonis.
Yonis isn't new. They discovered it in the late 1800s when people were drinking raw milk from the farms. They were finding this disease. They couldn't figure it out. They finally discovered, okay, this is Yonis disease. Yeah, so if you're buying milk from the store, pasteurized or organic, 1%, 2%, whatever you're buying.
Cody said it's believed to be in 100% of the large dairy herds.
Right, it's everywhere. Yonis is everywhere, and they are allowed a certain amount of Yonis in each bulk tank of milk.
So that means you are drinking, if you buy milk, unless you have a Yonis-free cow that you just tested within the last month, and yeah, your own cow that you're milking, that you tested, and you're sure she's not shedding. You did the fecal culture, right? You're sure she doesn't have Yonis. If you're buying milk from anywhere else, raw milk dairies, local, small, your neighbor who's got a Jersey,
organic, you might be drinking Yonis milk.
Yeah. So everybody, I mean, like, so many people drinking milk are drinking this kind of milk. And a couple people asked, like, how can they do that? How can they sell milk that has this in it? Welcome to large-scale food production. That's
small-scale food production.
Local to food production.
Welcome to food.
Yeah.
There's always a risk.
Always a risk. And the longer your chain and the less you know about where your food comes from, the less you know about where your food comes from. So how can they do that? The same way they can sell hamburgers with, rat poop in them. The same way they can do all these things. And even the same way your slow ags can, get away with stuff.
There's always a risk.
Which is why we try to raise as much of our own, because we can test our one cow and go, oh no, she's got Yonis, time to stop drinking her milk.
Well, yeah, we hadn't been drinking it actually since.
Fortunately, we haven't, for a long time.
Yeah, so we had stopped drinking it before she had tested positive.
So that brings out the other side of that question, where the other half of the people were saying, well, if it's in all the milk anyway, why even Cow Ladybug? If all the dairy herds have Yonis, and you've been drinking Yonis milk a big portion of your life, what's the worry? Just leave her be.
We will not be drinking her milk. Cody advised us, especially if we want to drink it raw, unpasteurized, not to drink the milk.
And not just Cody, I mean, that's
yeah. But I'm just
that's why we
throw in my vet reference.
But that's why
Cody
we
got
color. A disease-free cow is we do raise our own dairy animals because we do want to have 100-ish% confidence in our product.
If we personally know that she has this disease, I don't want to keep perpetuating this cycle.
Yeah.
Large dairies do it. Medium-sized dairies do it. People don't test their cows, so everyone's perpetuating this Yonis cycle because it's so hard. If they would cull all the cows with it, the industry would take a serious hit. So they don't, and the government doesn't make them do it because it's pretty much impossible at this point.
It would cause such a huge upset
disruption
in the current food production.
But that's why I have my own cows. So I'm in charge of the food that I'm eating, and I'm in charge of what my children are ingesting. So if I know this cow is Yonis positive, and perhaps there's a link to drinking Yonis positive milk with Crohn's disease, we will not be drinking that milk.
No. Yeah, that's why we do this, is to avoid that.
As much as we can.
As much as is possible.
Yeah. That's why we test. That's why the milk never made us sick. The milk never smelled funny. The cow never looked sick, which is a scary thing with Yonis because for people who have cows or know of this disease, you think you could look at a cow and say, well, she has Yonis.
Something's wrong,
she's thin, she's looks malnourished, she's not well. I had a couple people say that's scary because she doesn't look like a Yonis cow.
Yeah.
Because she's just started shedding. But she is.
Now, this is a funny one because we're not going to risk it with her milk. So we're going to butcher her and eat her meat. Huh? Wait, what? Okay, so this bacteria can be found in the milk and in the colostrum. From my understanding, correct me if you think I'm wrong, it's from actual little poo droplets winding up in the milk.
Well, it has to cross the barrier, and right, that's how they can get it in utero. So there's got to be some sort of blood.
Okay, so why are we gonna eat her meat if we aren't gonna drink her milk?
Let's find something.
We're gonna talk ourselves out of it right here on camera. We've gone back and forth a little bit on this one. We talked about maybe just doing dog food.
Right, because of the difficulty with butchering in the middle of summer.
When we talked to Cody, who is a cow vet specialist for beef herds, he used to work with beef herds. He said if you've ever bought a hamburger in your life, you're eating Yonis burgers. Basically, from the best of what we've learned, Yonis is not present, the bacteria, MAP.
The bacteria is in the milk, the colostrum, and the manure. It's not in the meat.
Not in the meat. And if you've ever bought a hamburger from anybody, you've bought beef from herds with Yonis. Now, there are people who are going to comment in this video, my family has raised beef for this many decades, and I've never heard of Yonis.
It's still there, unfortunately. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's not there. Beef producers, they slaughter their cows earlier than, say, a dairy would at 5 or 6 years old. So if the calves are grown, they're 3 years old, send them to slaughter, you don't see them develop it yet. Or unthrifty older cows who are just looking a little bit thin.
Oh, she's not keeping weight.
You know what? Call her too.
Yeah.
They don't test for it.
Some might, you might, but for those of you who are like, hey, I've never heard of this, my family's done beef forever, we've had a lot of beef people tell us that. Cody said a lot of beef people don't realize this is an issue, and he worked with large-scale beef production because they kill the cow before it presents.
Also, the testing is not 100% accurate. So you can draw blood and it can say they're negative. They're not necessarily negative. You can get false negatives. So what they say, can I say this?
Yeah.
The experts say that if a positive's typically a positive, and if it's a negative, keep looking, because it's there. It's pretty pervasive.
A lot of people have commented and said, I wouldn't take that risk in eating her meat if I were you. If you're a vegan, then you can say that. If you're a vegetarian, you could say that. If you buy beef, you are taking that risk. You are eating meat from herds that have Yonis. So, we're all in this together.
All in this together.
I'm pretty sure we were sitting on a sweat bee nest because we were getting swarmed by sweat bees. So we've moved to the barn to do the second half of our Q&A here, which will make for a nice
change. Less wind.
Less wind for sure. More machine noise. Okay, so we were talking about beef, and this is a hard one because people are like, I wouldn't risk it, but you do. If you eat beef, you're risking it.
Yeah, if you get beef from the supermarket, and I gotta do the list again, because if you eat beef from a local producer, if you eat beef from Whole Foods, Trader Joe's,
it doesn't matter. Five
Guys, Chipotle,
you're risking it.
You're risking. It's not just like a McDonald's thing. It's all McDonald's.
Because, as Gaffigan says, it's all McDonald's.
It's all Yonis burgers.
She doesn't look like a cow with Yonis. So even if the herd you are buying from looks at a bad cow and says, oh, check her up, she's got Yonis, gotta go. She's had Yonis for a while.
Right. Picture Ladybug on the line at a slaughterhouse, and they're inspecting, and okay, she's maybe a little thin.
Great.
That's okay. Just send her through.
Yeah.
Even after, when they're inspecting the carcass, the veterinarians do not find anything that says it should be discarded. So it goes into the food line.
They're not doing a fecal culture off of every cow that goes through the line. They just inspect visually. So if you eat beef from, again, a herd that you're not raising and testing frequently for Yonis, you are taking the same risk that we are considering taking and eating her beef.
Yeah. And if you're saying that, well, it's not in beef herds, okay, it is, but let's just say it's not. These culled dairy cows who maybe have dropped in production because of Yonis, they also get sent to slaughter to be made into ground beef. So
yeah,
it's one of those things that's everywhere.
They are in beef herds, though. I read an interesting article.
Yeah, I know.
The Dr. Robert Scrafford Cattle Health Assurance Program explained how devastating this disease can be to your beef herd, even more so than in a dairy herd. This is from countryfolks.com. He spoke to a room full of beef producers during a Central New York presentation coordinated by livestock specialists. Yonis is a chronic, long-term, progressive bacterial infection. You can't treat it, and yeah, guess what, beef producers?
Yeah, they're saying 1 out of 10 animals that goes through an auction has Yonis. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's.
So, do we eat her?
Like, we know that she has Yonis,
right?
So it makes it harder to say, like, yes, we definitely want to eat her meat and not just feed it to the dogs or something.
This is something that we are doing ongoing research about.
Yeah.
If we find anything that says no, you definitely shouldn't eat it, I don't think we'll find that.
Don't comment below. I wouldn't take the risk if you're eating beef, because you're taking the risk. If, at least with this, we know if we butcher her cleanly and we, can watch how we butcher this thing, the whole process. When you get ground beef, it's a lot of different cows ground up and put into ground beef. It's not one individual cow. Ladybug is one individual cow. She is very low on the scale of how much she's shedding right now. We can monitor the butchering process. As you can tell, we're still not 100% convinced we're gonna. She might become dog food. But that would mean we should never buy beef again, ever. And we don't really buy beef, but we do stop at Five Guys once in a while. Like, here's the thing, if you're buying from someone who does one individual cow at a time, you are reducing your risk. If you buy local from a local beef herd and you get a side of beef and it includes that cow's ground,
ready for this?
You are lowering your risk.
Unless it definitely has Yonis.
And then you're getting
at least in the big pot, you got like a little bit of Yonis, a little bit of MAP.
Oh man, these videos are depressing so many people. We're creating so many vegans. Who would have thought?
I mean, come on though. What are all the recalls for?
Lettuce, I know. Food is not.
It's not.
Yeah. Anyways. There were so many questions about Yonis, Ladybug. We go on to talk about different treatment possibilities and whether or not we are going to try any of them. We talk about the plans for culling Ladybug and if that is what we have to do, what we are going to do. And we also tell you what you're going to see here on YouTube as things go forward. And we talk about all that in the next part. We had to split this one up. It was so big. So in part B of this Ask Homesteady, we'll cover those questions and more. Stay tuned for that video. It'll be coming out soon. This has been a roller coaster. And if you'd like to support our channel in a very painless way, if you appreciate the fact that we add to the awareness about diseases like this and that we're completely transparent and we're telling you all the bad things that happen so you know what to look out for, you can support our channel totally without spending an extra dime. If you're shopping on Amazon, type in amsteady.com before shopping on Amazon. It'll forward you to Amazon. Anything you purchase, we will earn a small commission, but you will not pay a penny extra. It's a great way to help us do this show and inform you, even when it means losing thousands of dollars in cattle sales. You can support us painlessly by shopping through that. You can even click this link right here. Thank you so much. We'll see you in part B of this Q&A.